Good evening, everybody. Hell's Unicorn here once again. I apologize for the silence over these past couple of days, but I've had some personal affairs that I've had to get in order. But now that business has been concluded for this weekend, we have some pretty good news, particularly out of Minnesota, where we racked up 32 out of 40 delegates. That is a big win, considering that was allegedly Rick Santorum country. In Vermont, the results were a little bit less encouraging. We only managed to get 2 out of 14 actual delegates, but we did get 10 alternates. So, if with a good bit of luck, provided that Mitt Romney's supporting delegates are as dispassionate as they've been thus far, we might have more than 2 out of 14 delegates, depending on how many of the primary delegates end up not showing up, which hopefully a good deal of them won't. Now on to Virginia. This was an interesting one. I remember previously how everybody in the media was projecting that Ron Paul was only going to get 3 out of 33 delegates, and lo and behold, he got 17 out of 33. That is the equivalent of getting a 53% to 47% victory. So we essentially took Virginia. Although I would have liked a more overwhelming victory, we still got a respectable amount of delegates. In the state of Michigan, we didn't fare quite as well. We only got 8 out of 30 delegates, but you know something? Something is better than nothing. And if we can take some out of Mitt Romney's hands, all the better. So, in essence, total this weekend, we have won, with certainty, a total of 59 delegates out of a potential 100-something. That's not a bad run. Now, I'm not including South Carolina and Georgia, which I had a feeling we weren't going to do too well in, The deeper we get into the Mason-Dixon territory, it seems the harder time we seem to have, as there's plenty of brainwashed idiots down there, unfortunately. There's a rich history of skepticism towards tyrannical federal governments in the Carolinas and in Georgia, but unfortunately, it hasn't been on display in recent decades. Nevertheless, all in all, I say this was a pretty good weekend, considering that the entire media and most of the boneheads that are pushing Romney have been saying that Ron Paul has ended his campaign, which he hasn't. He just had a successful money bomb where he raised well over $700,000. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably closer to $800,000. But it's a lot more than the $650,000 that he was asking for. So kudos to all of you who donated. I unfortunately have been maxed out for a couple of weeks now, so I was not able to participate. But I'm participating in other ways. And one way in which I think all of you ought to be participating is this. We've taken over some state parties. Those state parties will have a very big say on what kind of Congress and Senate candidates will be running in the coming years. And in order to ultimately rein in the Federal Reserve, and in order to rein in, to a large extent, this foreign policy, we're going to need to have a stronger presence in Congress. We're much stronger now than we were 4 years ago, but there's a lot more work to be done, and taking over these state parties is a big part of it. I actually argue to all of you that it may be easier still to take over some of these state parties in the off years where there aren't elections. But in 2016, we may be availed further opportunity to expand this base that we've already created. But in the meantime, it is necessary for us to protect what we have gained. In Iowa and in Nevada in particular, countermeasures are being launched by the establishment, and shadow parties are being set up, and funds are being deprived for the new chairmanships and the new parties that we've taken over, so to speak. So it's very important that if you have money to spare and you're already tapped out on Ron Paul, to give a little bit to these state parties, even if you don't live in these states, in order to protect what we have gained. And I'm going to conclude this with just some final sentiments regarding all of the whining about Ron Paul being a Republican and needing to run third party. We've taken over several state parties. What happens to those state parties when Ron Paul drops out of the Republican Party and runs as an independent? The truth is, those leadership positions that we had just grabbed on will wither away and die if we sabotage them. And that's what a third-party candidacy would amount to. Now, feel free, by all means, if Paul does not prevail in the Republican Party, to write his name in. Feel free to do that. Feel free to cast a vote for Gary Johnson of the Libertarian Party or any other third-party candidate if you so choose. By no means am I trying to get you to vote blindly for Republicans. But what I am telling you right now is this revolution is officially, as of now, a Republican one. And judging by the way things have gone in the Democrat Party right now, I would say it's going to be a long time before any headway is made in that party. They just axed Dennis Kucinich, and they've been axing other non-establishment thinkers in the party. So where do you think Ron Paul has for a revolution in the Democratic Party? The answer is there is none. The Democrat Party, by its nature, is much more centralized, so it's very difficult to get in there and actually make reforms. The Republican Party, like it or not, is the home of the revolution right now, and if you don't get it, then you're not going to get it. But the fact of the matter is, Paul has been running as a Republican, and there are two parties that control the entire electoral process. So if you want to be involved in the process, if you want to get into those debates with actual candidates that matter, you got to take over one of the two major parties. And right now, as it stands, the Republican Party, for all the warmongering and for all the corporatism and all the other crap that's going on, is the easier target of the two in terms of infiltration. So definitely think these things over before you go around yammering about a third-party run. Until next time, with prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.